So Jim, you've just returned from Bangkok. What is the status of the global climate talks? Did they make progress in Bangkok?
Well, it looks like they've made some progress. They've certainly been more open to civil society engagement than at, it seems, any of the earlier talks. That was something we were hearing from a lot of different partners, that all of a sudden the delegates are a lot more interested in engaging with the non-governmental community than they had been earlier. And part of that, I think, is out of some frustration and desperation about moving forward. So I think that because of this sense of urgency, there was probably progress in some areas, but overall, the mood is still pretty gloomy.
Where does agriculture fit within the climate talks?
Well, it looks like they're trying to consolidate the agriculture section a little bit. In the earlier drafts of the treaty, there had been just a few references to it, and they had been spread out among a little bit in the section on adaptation. Sort of, we need to help the agricultural sector adapt to climate change, a little bit on technology transfer, and so forth. There is now a working group on agriculture within the negotiations, people from 5 or 6 countries who are trying to get a more consolidated statement on the role of agriculture. And that text was the focus of a lot of our interventions and discussions this week.
Well, tell us about some of the interventions that took place or discussions. You organized a workshop?
Yeah, we did. One of the things that we had seen from our engagement in the earlier climate talks was that the voices of real farmers, and especially farmers in the global south, have been really not heard so far. So this was and at the same time, because we have a lot of allies in farmers associations around the world, we were aware that in many cases they didn't have very strong capacity or understanding of what some of the issues being discussed were. I mean, farmers are experiencing climate change firsthand, and so they're certainly concerned, and they're already adapting in many cases. But in terms of understanding what the different elements of the global climate deal are, which is this incredibly complex negotiating process, they've really been left outside. And so the workshop brought together people from farmers groups from Africa and Asia and Latin America with some of the environmental groups that are working, and development also groups that are working on the inside on the negotiations. And it was a very interesting kind of combination, education and experience sharing and strategy session.
What were some of the issues that emerged from those discussions?
Well, one of the important ones, I think, was the farmers feeling that we really need to be much more upfront about what kind of model of agriculture we want to promote, and not just thinking about, well, what are the, what would the details of carbon trading look like, but also actually say we want the treaty to endorse sustainable agricultural practices and many things that small farmers around the world are already doing or would be prepared to do as important measures for dealing with climate change. I think that was a big one. There were also some interesting concerns raised about geoengineering in agriculture, the new kind of cluster of techno fixes that are being pushed, and some of them have really just come onto the radar screen in the last few months. Biochar is a big one. And we heard quite a lot from one of the groups that's been trying to monitor the biochar initiative that's being pushed onto the climate negotiations.
Well, looking forward to Copenhagen, what do you see as the next steps for organizations and concerned people who are interested in how agriculture and food might be treated?
Well, I think one of the things that we're involved in is really trying to get the word out to more farmers' organizations around the world to get them a better understanding of what some of the issues are. So we decided that moving forward we're going to have a sort of a more centralized communications hub where people from grassroots and policy and activist groups around the world can find material on climate change and share news releases and new studies they find, and hopefully here at IATP we'll help build that kind of a web-based tool that can be a place where people can go for that information. Second of all, I think that we really need to be basically talking to our leaders wherever we're living in the world, and pushing for strong and meaningful agreement in Copenhagen. There's seems to be a loss of momentum because in the U.S. there's a lot of controversy about whether the weakened Waxman-Markey bill will even be able to get through, and a lot of people seem to see the U.S.'s leadership role kind of flagging, and so other countries are there will be a similar loss of momentum. So I think, making it clear to our leaders that we want something that's going to really reduce emissions and that's going to put the lion's share of the responsibility on the developed nations that have played the biggest role in causing the problem. I think that's probably the most important thing we can do between now and Copenhagen. The details of what kind of a deal there is and what it entails will be worked out by negotiators, but I think the mandate has to come from citizens.
Great. Thanks very much.